Way of the Dragon also allows Bruce to take the application of his trademark weapon, the nunchaku, even further than in Fist of Fury. In an amazing scene at the back of the restaurant, Lee dispatches his attackers using not one, but two sets simultaneously.
Get him!
Predictably, Way of the Dragon smashes the box office record previously set by Fist of Fury, and public demand for the movie is so high that the police have to reroute traffic away from theaters during screenings. Now the biggest star in all of Southeast Asia, Bruce's meteoric rise to fame has single-handedly revitalized the fledgling Hong Kong film industry, previously known only for small-budget Mandarin language pictures, with little or no marketability outside the home territory.
Until then, it had been pretty much an indigenous thing. It was possible, I would think, in those days, to make a film in Hong Kong and expect to perhaps get your money back just with a Hong Kong audience, although that was marginal. But Bruce Lee did change everything. There was a whip-cracking vitality about the guy.
After years of battling cultural prejudice, professional bigotry, and periods of economic hardship in pursuit of his dream, Bruce Lee is finally a star in every sense of the word. And in Hong Kong, his photograph dominates almost every magazine and newspaper in circulation.
One time, sitting in his office, he told me his dream was one day was to be a bigger movie star than Steve McQueen, who at the time was the biggest movie star in the world. It's a little ironic that 20 years later, more people probably remember Bruce Lee than remember Steve McQueen. However, I can assure you, if you walked down the street with Bruce Lee or you tried to go into a restaurant in Hong Kong, you immediately became aware of how big a star he was. And there was no star bigger than Bruce Lee in Asia. And I would probably say, even to this day, there is no star, certainly there is no Asian film star that has ever achieved the level of recognition and popular appeal that Bruce Lee had and continues to have to this day.
Fame, however, did not come without a price.
Because of his status of being very famous. I mean, I've never been with him in a place where there was like 20 to 30, possibly 50 people just crowding around him. So he didn't have any privacy, and he didn't like that part. But he enjoyed having what I call fame, but he didn't like sometimes the things that went along with it, like eating in a restaurant and people, you know, looking in the window to see who he was, and people bought him. And then he said also that people are always asking him favors, and he didn't know who his real friends were. So I think that bothered him a lot, you know. And I asked him, well, have you been working out? I said, well, I don't have the time to work out before because there's no one, I just only can train my own body. I can't work out with anybody. And film work is not exactly a workout, you know, it's just doing what the film requires. So I think with his newfound status as a movie star, he had definitely some dislikes about it because it invaded his privacy.
In August of 1972, Bruce begins work on a project which will communicate for the first time the true essence of the revolutionary martial arts ideology, which he's developed over a lifetime of dedicated study, philosophical reflection, and impartial evaluation. His ideology is known simply as Jeet Kune Do, or the Way of the Intercepting Fist, and the project which he has chosen to illustrate it is entitled The Game of Death.
Jeet Kune Do is man's liberation from system and style. He's truly expressing what works for him. Because what works for one individual, it may not work for another individual. And that's the bottom line.
In the words of Bruce Lee, Jeet Kune Do is a direct expression of one's feelings with a minimum of movement and energy. Bruce's favorite analogy in the explanation of this philosophy is, in building a statue, a sculptor does not add clay to his subject, rather he chisels away the surplus material until the truth is revealed without obstructions. Thus, JKD is not a daily increase, it's a daily decrease. In practical terms, Jeet Kune Do is a fluid fighting system without limitations.
Jeet Kune Do, according to Bruce Lee, meant the way of the intercepting fist. I guess like if a punch or a kick is coming your direction, the man's energy is coming towards you, you want to try to intercept the person's force and use the opening, such as if a person is firing a punch at you, he's leaving his chin open, he's leaving his ribs open. If he's firing a kick, he's leaving his midsection open, he's leaving his groin open. He's immobile, he can't move if he's standing on one foot executing the kick. And then you can take advantage of the person's weak points at that particular time.
Lee considers the message within the game of death as his greatest truth, and he resolves that this cinematic legacy will forever illustrate his key ideological and martial theories for future generations to come. In essence, it will be an artistic exploration of the fundamental principles of Jeet Kune Do.
What he was trying to tell me always is I'm not trying to take a little bit from Choi Li Fat and a little bit from praying mantis and a little bit from Wing Chun and then put a little Western boxing. He says I want to express myself. So what I want to get from this method is the essence. What is the essence of Wing Chun? What is the essence of Chin Na? What is the essence of Western boxing? What is the essence of Choi Li Fat? I'm not copying the techniques, but the essence, why it's good. And he always talked about the essence with me. And I feel that's basically what he was trying to do. So in the Jun Fan Gung Fu, this is how Jeet Kune Do was evolved. He says, I want to utilize all ways, not just stay within the Chinese method. However, I'm Chinese, and it has a Chinese name, but Jeet Kune Do as a whole was to absorb literally what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what's your own.
On his objectives as a filmmaker, Bruce had stated during filming for an earlier role, I hope to make multi-level films here, the kind of movies where you can just watch the surface story if you like, or look deeper into it. Most of the Chinese movies to date have been very superficial and one-dimensional.
When I was training with Bruce Lee, and he wanted to make pictures, and at the time I was with him, I didn't fully understand, but he says, you know, I'm going to make movie pictures, and from these movie pictures, people are going to appreciate martial art. And when they start to appreciate martial art, they're going to appreciate the Chinese culture, because Chinese martial arts, they get to appreciate something in Chinese. If they can appreciate something that the Chinese have, then they will be able to appreciate what other Asians have. If they appreciate what other Asians have, then they're going to appreciate things from other cultures, whether it be from the Asian or from the Latin American countries, or if it's from the European countries, or if it's from the African countries, they're going to appreciate it. So it's, like I said, it serves as a universal vehicle for all of us to understand each other.
Whilst location scouting with James Coburn in Nepal for a project entitled The Silent Flute in 1968, Bruce had fallen in love with the intricate multi-level pagodas on display there and resolved to use them in a future project. When he begins development for the Game of Death 4 years later, Lee resurrects the idea once again, finally settling on the beautiful and dramatic Buddhist temple of Pok Ju So as the backdrop for the climactic fight scenes. From inception to realization, Bruce is involved in every aspect of production for the Game of Death, taking on the responsibility of producer, director, scriptwriter, action choreographer, and of course, leading actor. Filming in the height of the oppressive Hong Kong summer in stifling sound stages with no air conditioning, temperatures often reach the mid-90s during principal photography, with humidity levels running at an average of 90%. For his co-stars, Lee's drive for perfection can be both exhausting and at times frustrating, as take after take is required to capture the perfect shot. Lee, however, is hardest on himself. This rare sequence of outtakes shows him carry out no less than 10 takes for a nunchaku display sequence which will remain on screen for just under 4 seconds. Bruce suspends filming on The Game of Death in October of 1972 when he learns from producer Fred Weintraub that Warner Brothers are interested in co-producing his next film. This historic pronouncement heralds for the first time in the history of motion pictures a co-production between a Chinese and an American studio. The opportunity is timely. The film is Enter the Dragon. Working feverishly on the project from January to April 1973, Lee, in characteristic fashion, supervises every aspect of the production on Enter the Dragon. His handling of the fight choreography in particular is outstanding. Raw, full-blooded and bursting with energy, each sequence carries the trademark stamp of Bruce Lee quality. Upon viewing the completed rushes for the